The latest UN report on children in armed conflict has listed Israel as the country with the most grave violations against children. I sat down with Vanessa Frazier, the special representative of the Secretary General for Children in Armed Conflict, to talk about this explosive report and the blacklist of violators against children. I'm Frank Uciardo, and you're watching TRT World One-on-One. Vanessa Frazier, you are the Secretary General Special Representative for Children in Armed Conflict, also an Undersecretary General here at the United Nations. Thank you for joining us here at TRT World.
Thank you.
Now, your latest report had some really staggering figures in it and revelations, and I guess going back to 1996 when the whole mandate started, this is the first time that governments have been named rather than state actors as top violators. Tell me about some of the top violators in governments here.
We have 9 governments, state actors that are, because they are not the governments, they're armed forces or security forces that are listed, and 67 non-state actors. Those are the armed groups. And it is a grim milestone because state actors are the ones who are responsible for protecting the civilians.
Who are the countries that top the list?
We have the Israeli Defense and Security Forces, we have Myanmar, South Sudan, Russian security forces are there also, DRC, Somalia, and Myanmar is where we've seen a really drastic increase.
When I looked into the report, it seemed like we have Israeli armed and security forces committing over 12,000 grave violations. Are those figures accurate?
The figures, unfortunately, for the occupied Palestinian territories are staggeringly higher than any of the others.
Now, the overall numbers in the report, we have over 38,500 verified grave violations, and that's including almost 25,000 children?
Yes, exactly. So let me try and explain a bit the verification method that we have. So when there are these numbers, this is basically the lowest possible number. It does not mean those are the absolute numbers in a country, in a situation that we're reporting on. In order to verify one of the violations on our report, we need to have 2 primary sources and 1 corroborating source.
Now, it's likely that these numbers are higher.
Yes. They are much higher also because so we report on 6 grave violations, right? One of the 6 grave violations, for example, denial of humanitarian access, we only report the incident, but we cannot report how many children were affected by it because it's numerous. So for example, if a truck of humanitarian aid is blocked, it affects many children, but we count it as 1 violation of denial. If an attack on a water plant or an energy plant occurred which had a negative humanitarian consequence on children, we cannot quantify how big that is. So actually many more children have been affected by the violations that are recorded in our report.
Looking at the report, it seems like the numbers keep increasing over the past 2 years, and it seems like this is a disturbing trend of a lack of respect for the Charter and international law.
That's why it is so concerning that there are 9 state actors that are listed, because the state actors are supposed to be working within the realms of international law, are supposed to be protecting citizens. War has rules, and those rules are not being taken into consideration. And there are rules of war because when political and military leaders are planning an operation, they have to plan it in a way to limit civilian casualties. So as President Trump himself recently noted, if a targeted terrorist enters into a building, you don't have to blow up the entire building. But it's not acceptable that you just use all sorts of weaponry and then the apartment buildings or schools and hospitals nearby are also hit.
Is this trend because people don't think they'll be held accountable?
Yes.
Is impunity?
That's a simple answer. Yes. It's this sense of impunity is why we are seeing an increase in state actors violating.
In your report, there's notes about direct sexual violence against children, and it included countries, DRC, Nigeria, Somalia. Sudan. Those are pretty horrible statistics.
We have seen a trend where there is an increase and deliberate use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, because we are seeing also gang rapes, an increase in that. So this shows that it is premeditated, and it is a conscious decision to use sexual violence against children as a weapon.
In Sudan, we have seizures in parts of the country that have been devastating to the population, taken an immense toll on the children there.
We have seen an increase in Sudan there, and at this point, really in these days, it is very concerning what is going on there. The Secretary General has also spoken about how worried he is about the escalations at the moment, and a possible impending attack by the RSF, which of course might have negative effects on children, clearly will, not might have. Children in Sudan are also targeted, it seems, for recruitment, and they are used, they have a value, so they are used in various ways by armed groups, not only for sexual fetishes, of course, but also for border guards. They are used to carry weapons. They are used as cooks and there are various spies. They have various roles that they are used for within the armed groups, and we need to work better with both the RSF and the SAF there to ensure that children are protected.
You did visit Ukraine.
Yes.
And you probably were witnessed and saw the results of attacks on schools and hospitals. Tell us what you saw there.
When I was in Ukraine, I did have the opportunity to speak to many children who were affected, and I visited some of the schools. I went to the new underground schools that through the United Nations system and other donors are being set up in order to bring children offline, but to be able to interact in person with other students. And when I met with these children, they were very grateful for the fact that they could interact with other children, because all of them have similar fears and concerns and trauma that they've been through, fears for their families, fears for persons they have lost. When they're in their school and they hear an air raid siren going off, they can share those fears much more easily with another child of their age that is going through the same trauma.
So looking at your report here, we have Israel topping the list, Russia, we have followed by Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Myanmar, Somalia, as well as Sudan. Yet only Israel has leveled personal accusations and personal insults and attacks against your report and you. What happened there?
Attacks were not against me. They were against another Under Secretary General on conflict-related sexual violence, but she was not in the room. But then, because I requested that these attacks stop, then he did also level some attacks against me and the report. But those who follow the UN and the UN reporting know that our reports are based on verified data, as we were just speaking. In this case, it was the Israeli ambassador. We document cases of violations against Israeli children in our report, and I think it does not do justice to their suffering and their pain and what they have endured and what their families might have endured because of it by saying that our report is based on lies. It doesn't do justice, and he's supposed to be representing and advocating the victims of his country.
You were recently in Haiti, and that's one of the longest standing hotspots that really has not been addressed by the UN in a long, long time. The children there seem to me to be paying a double price in terms of recruitment and being attacked or violated.
I was really shocked when I was in Haiti on the ground, I'm going to say it, because it was something, the children there really are suffering. So it was that children were already suffering from a breakdown of the family structure. So some of the children that I met had already encountered, the first violence that they encountered is at home. And then they leave and they are vulnerable to violence, of course, by the armed groups. So I had some harrowing stories, personal accounts from especially young girls, but even boys, about some of the situations that they've gone through. So with this next element of the gang suppression force going in, we really need to ensure that all the elements that we have so far are working well, because the idea is that, of course, more gangs will be suppressed, meaning more children will be separated from them. And so all these transition centers and handover protocols that we have need to be working properly now, because they will have many more to deal with in the coming months.
No, I was struck by a line from a statement in the report. You say, facing the truth is harsh, but facing the cost of our inaction is harsher. Seems to me, based on your experience being on the Security Council, that you were talking about them.
It is very clear that the tools exist, international law exists, accountability mechanisms exist, Security Council tools exist also, but the political will in order to use those tools to hold perpetrators accountable does not exist. So we share in the blame right here as well, that member states now need to understand that inaction leads to these rising numbers. And so I know that children can benefit directly if we take the right decisions and use the tools that are available. We do not need new tools.
When you meet these victims, do they ever ask you anything? And as a mother, are you frustrated that you can't directly say, I can promise something or give you this?
What do they ask for? They will ask for the same thing. They tell us, they say, well, leaders, you have the tools. Help us. Give us the hope for a future. Get us out of the cycle of violence. Protect us. These children inspire me, because hope springs eternal. And when I'm there, they know that there's somebody at the UN that's going to advocate for them. So you see the hope that they put in me, and it really inspires. I get so much strength from them, very much strength.
Vanessa Frazier, Under Secretary General and the Secretary General's Special Representative for Children in Armed Conflict. Thank you for joining us here on TRT World today.
Thank you for the opportunity.